and then he turns up, and then there's no house there.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the January Developer Update with me, Pavia Ross, and I'm joined here today with Paul Manuel. Paul, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, very well. It's nice of you to turn up to work
an
today.
Appearance in the office.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for coming in.
I'd turn up. Yeah.
It has been a very busy 2 months, hasn't it? It's been extremely busy. We've had the live event, we had the Builder Tool update, and it was a really nice way to end the year, I thought. And I just want to first of all get your thoughts on the live event. How did you think it went?
It went really well, and we were very happy with how the whole thing went. There's so many unknowns when you come to do that kind of stuff. Technical unknowns, as well as will the community show up, as well as, and are they going to like what they see and all the rest of it. And particularly when you're putting product out there super early, when there's so much more you still need to do and all that kind of stuff. So it's, they often say, if you've perfected your product, then you probably left it too late to put it in front of your customers.
Interesting.
So, but it always feels quite bold putting it out there and getting that first feedback.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, we were delighted. We had, well over, the game was downloaded a lot. We had well over 1,100 people turn up. Really high concurrent user numbers, which we were absolutely delighted about. We did an hour in the Asian region, an hour in the Europe, and an hour in the US. All were incredibly well attended, which was fantastic. And the feedback was really, really good. Also really constructive as well.
It was very positive. Servers filling out way quicker than we ever could have imagined.
Yep.
Covering the 3 time zones, I think, was a great idea.
Albeit
it was a long day for us, was it?
Oh, it was. Yeah, it was a big shift for the team. It was a big shift, but it was worth it. And there's this really magical moment because we were all in the game ahead of everybody else, obviously. So us lot are in the game, stood looking back at the spawn area, going and go, and we open it up, and then you literally just see like almost raining from the sky,
floods of players,
all these people
just
joining
coming in,
and instantly just running towards what we're going to explore, and us following them, going, "Oh, wonder where they're going to go," So it was a really, really brilliant experience, and all the tech held up. We also got some great feedback. Thanks ever so much to the community. So many people filled in the feedback form. Some people obviously had problems in terms of, some people got lag and this, that, and the other. We got tons of information about people's operating systems, what versions of Windows they're running, graphics card, RAM, all that kind of thing. So we got a real sense of, where it went really, really smoothly.
Right.
Some people, struggled on certain machines and so on. So we've got all that feedback and we can adapt and respond to that as well. So
and it's brilliant. And like you said, thank you to everyone that took part in the live event. It was absolutely incredible to see everyone come together and just take part in it and actually get to experience Cyberpunk and a little bit of Pavia for the first time. Yeah,
so feedback really was, loved the aesthetics. People loved it. They loved we got some incredible comments about how good it looked. It was a very simple collection mechanic for Pavs, but the ability for people to collect something and then mint an NFT there and then was extremely well received.
It was a great test for us too. That's being able to give back to the community, especially just for taking part of the live event. People trying to find these Pavs, and I know some of them weren't the easiest to find, so congratulations if you did mint one. But it was a fantastic mechanic just to get us started and just to get feedback on, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And then also, having simple things, but like real-time content coming from Web2 land, if you like, from Twitter, but directly into the game. People loved that as well. And then the Cardano community certainly appreciated a bit of effort there about putting, a good mention to a lot of projects.
Some nice little Easter eggs in there.
Yeah, some Easter eggs. So it was a lot of fun. In summary, very happy with how it went. Learned a lot, and it was a positive end to the year. Yeah.
Awesome. And you spoke briefly about feedback. It's always different, isn't it, building a live event as opposed to the actual live launch of Pavia. So talk to me a little bit about, especially the production code and how you're going to optimize going forward.
Yeah, so there are things which we were 100% knew we were doing when we pushed the live event out. We wanted to hit that milestone, not miss it. but it definitely had, you know, some unoptimized code in there, which we were aware of. There's some prototype code in there for sure, which we were aware of. So we're just using this opportunity to take the feedback from the community, but also get things super cleaned up. So we go, right, okay, this bit's been optimized and now it works as we would have hoped.
Right.
And so on and so forth. So there's a real housekeeping exercise been going on for, you know, sort of post-Christmas really, to go, right, here is a very, very clean version of that code base. And then over here is all the prototyping stuff and getting super organized like that. So loads of optimizations going on as a result.
That's great.
We pretty much finished that process now. So we have a very clean version, at least of that part of the game.
And that habit is actually, it's super important to get into that habit of creating clean code, because when you're making a game, you know, or metaverse experience or whatever of this size, it's super important because, you know, you've got user generated content, you've got the visuals that, you know, like we said, are above your average metaverse. So it's something definitely to think about. Alongside the live event, we also had the Builder Tool Smart Objects update, which I had so much fun filming and doing the voiceover for. Talk to me a little bit about that. What's going on with the Builder Tool right now?
Builder Tool is one of the main focuses of the of Q1 for sure, but of this year. But we're really pushing hard. We put out a incredibly early alpha last year just for people to start to see progress more than anything, and also gather some feedback. That was invaluable, that process, because the community really, really validated, we like it, but we wish it had this. We like it, but this was too difficult, or it was great, but it was a bit hard here and there. And we took all that feedback. And what we want to do is keep iterating towards our full release, which we hope to do in Q1, which is what we're calling version 1, which will be our first production release. Still alpha in many ways, in the sense that, you know, it's a early set of features, but it will definitely have some fundamentally big feature sets that are coming in that the first one didn't have, and smart objects is part of that. So there's multiple areas, but the two key areas we're focusing on is introducing the concept of smart objects. If you haven't seen the video, go on YouTube. It explains it very well. Good job, Ross. But I'll talk about it in a sec. The introduction of smart objects in addition to 3D props, which are already there, and then some fundamental improvements to the usability of it, which will make it a heck of a lot easier to use.
Definitely.
So on those two topics, at the moment, the first release was props only. So there's a whole inventory, thousands of props you can use, put them on the scene, manipulate them, transform them, and all the rest of it, and that's great. But you're still limited to stretching and transforming that original object, be it a flower or whatever it is, you know, a bench, a chair, what have you. But obviously what people need is the ability to be able to construct as well. So, well, actually, I just want a primitive like a wall or a window or a staircase or a roof or some terrain or some ground or some just basic primitive shapes like spheres, blocks, that kind of thing. And then once you have them, you want to be able to go, okay, now I want to manipulate that, not just in its shape and its size and its positioning, but also I want to put this kind of material on it. I want to put brick on it. I want to put a canvas on it. I want to put, you know, some kind of like texture on top as well. And then also I want to alter that color. I want it deep red, or I want it bright purple. Or I want this. And that. So people can really bring their own kind of creativity to that thing. But more importantly, that thing needs to snap to the grid really well. So it's easy to put in. But also, as your video well explains, I've built a wall, but I actually need, obviously I'm using houses as or buildings as an example here, but I need to put a window in it. Well, then instantly that's a bit of a pain, because it's like, well, now I need a hole in that set wall. Whereas what smart objects do, smart because they're intelligent, is grab window, manipulate window as well if you wish, change the shape of it, color of it, style of it, and all that kind of stuff. Put it on the wall, and the hole immediately gets cut out of the wall, and the window is there.
Magic. And
then if you decide to move that wall, that window, that hole will go with you. Same with doors and so on. And staircases is another really nice example, which is, okay, I need some stairs. I need some steps. Okay, well, here's the stairs. What color do you want them? What shape do you want them? What kind of texture do you want on them? Do you want them floating? Do you want banister rails? You know, do you want them that kind of thing? Do you want how deep do you want the tread? And then more importantly, once you've got it in position, as we all well know, stairs aren't too useful if you don't have a hole above them. Otherwise you'll bang your head on the ceiling. So stairs will instantly go, oh, there's a floor above this, I've cut a hole in it. And if you go, well, I don't want my stairs there now, I want them over here, and I want them a bit wider, fine, the hole will move as well. So that's the idea of smart objects, is it just makes building things a lot easier. And I honestly think we've just scraped the surface, because the obvious thing is to talk about is buildings, houses, floors and roofs and stuff like that. But I think there's so much more we can do. And one last thing on smart objects, where we hope to get to, not necessarily in this release, but then will be, let's call them game objects, but objects that have an impact on the environment or the player.
Right.
Okay, and that's when it gets really interesting. Go, right, I can put a start point here, or a stop point here, or a time. I can trigger a timer here, or I can, hinge this object to move like this, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or I can have this object that's flying around. If I get hit by it, it's going to damage my health. That kind of thing will be the next phase. I can't put any dates or times on that, but that's definitely the bit where you go from building and creating from a sort of art and architecting perspective, if you like,
right,
to go, okay, now this is more interactive and now this is more playable.
This is one step more.
So again, that comes under the banner of smart objects. So
wow.
That's the big thing. And then the last thing to say, I know I'm talking a lot, but on the usability side, when you build a scene, it can get complicated really quick, because you can have loads and loads of assets all over the place. So we're building in some hierarchy management effectively, where you can group various things together. Like, okay, all right, I've got a table, but on top of the table I've put a flower pot,
things on it,
things on the rest of it. Well, actually those things are now childs, if you like, of the table. In other words, the table is higher in the hierarchy, so they're inevitably grouped together. So if you move the table, all the other stuff will come with it.
Yeah.
And then you can expand that thinking, if you get really organized, go, well, actually, I'm just doing, if it were a building again, I'm doing ground floor, I'm doing first floor, I'm doing roof. And you hierarchically organize yourself. So it makes things so much easier to edit. And the same way with visibility, right? Okay, I'm going to click this and just make the whole of my first floor invisible, because I'm just working on the ground floor and it's now out of my scene. I can manipulate things. So those fundamental usability features are coming in.
So it's grown a lot since, when we put out the previous version, and we're aiming for Q1, which is a very ambitious and aggressive timeline, isn't it? And it's safe to say that, and I just want to reiterate this to everyone, is that when this next builder tool comes out, it's not a one and done, right? We've delivered it, and there's going to be constant updates of adding things and mini games and more features and more utility too, right?
Yeah, definitely. I could talk about this for hours, and I don't want to bore everybody watching this video, but
you've done it before.
But blueprints is a no-brainer for me. It's like, right, okay, I'm in the builder tool, but I want to see a bunch of things to get me off the ground first, because I don't want to start from scratch.
Templates, for sure.
Yeah, a whole bunch of templates and blueprints. And then even better would be, which I totally would love to do, is actually, and all of these have been created by the community. So actually, they've freely gone, I've created this, use it if you want. It's a good starter for a house. Click on that, boom, it's on my scene. Right now I can go in and change some of the colors and manipulate things for people that don't want to start from scratch. So many things that we can do with this, which are really, really, really exciting to me, because we just want to really, really light a fire under the creativity of people that want to take their first step into building in a 3D environment,
right?
Without having to go through all of the significant learning curve of having to learn Blender or learn Unity or learn,
because it is overwhelming sometimes.
Max.
Like when you've got a blank canvas and someone says paint, it's often hard to imagine something. But if you've got something to work from, like you said, like the blueprints and the templates and stuff, absolutely a lot easier.
You really you're really existing in a space somewhere between Sims, which is literally obviously incredibly beautifully done and easy to use, but it's really tied down to that game. Okay, click, 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 and I'll build a house. And then the other extreme, obviously, is 3D Max and Blender and all the things that the professional 3D artists use, which have a big learning curve and a lot to. I wouldn't say we're in the middle. We're down the very, very usable end of that, but at the same time taking that sort of fundamental 3D approach, which is we don't want to limit you to just going click, 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 and I've built a Sims house. We want you to be able to go, okay, I've really put my brain to work here, and I've figured out if I do this, and this, and bundle them together and save them away as a little custom asset, that is a super cool thing I could reuse.
Absolutely.
And start to get your own design flavor.
It's a simple to use tool, but with a learning curve, and that's what I really like about it, is that you can use our builder tool for a couple of hours, and within 10 minutes you can make something, and then within 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours a day, you're constantly learning, you're constantly creating more.
Exactly. I think a golden moment for me would be, when, like with Minecraft, you get YouTube videos and you go, you need to watch this. You are not going to believe what this person or this community have built in Minecraft. And you go, oh, wow, someone's built the Mona Lisa. Wow. Or someone's built the Mayflower, or someone's built a working computer out of Logic Gates, a full-blown CPU, And, okay, that's Minecraft, it's a big world. But the equivalent moment for that would be people going, this person, you should follow them. You can't believe what they're getting out of this builder tool and the type of things they're building in Pavia. And then you have something to sort of aspire to.
Right.
That's the dream. That's what would really excite us. I think.
So you touched on smart objects, and I love them because they're so simple to use, and they actually save so much time. But they're not exclusive to the builder tool, are they? We will be using them to some extent in the outer worlds, and that's something that I know Pavia have been working on a lot recently. Yeah,
so glad you brought that up, because this last thing about the builder tool, but it relates to the outer world, is the reason this is quite a heavy lift getting the builder tool off the ground is because about 50% of the work is nothing to do with the builder tool. It's actually to do with ensuring that the thing you build is going to work as well as we want it to in the final world.
Yeah.
So, for example, LODs or LODs, or level of detail, is basically, if you know anything about video games, you know that the thing you see up close to you, there is a different version of it a bit further away and a different version of it a bit further away. And it's all to do with draw calls and rendering and ensuring that you optimize for performance. So you would not want to put all the rendering effort into drawing something in high detail that's like,
super far away,
3 miles down the road, because you just don't need to. And so there is a thing called level of details. In video games, it's handled in different ways with various different engines. But essentially, that's the principle, which is you have multiple versions of that in order to optimize what you're trying to draw for the user. Now, our challenge, of course, is all of this content isn't created by us. It's created by the users, and it lives in the cloud. So therefore, LOD creation, or a form of manipulation of the detail, has to be done all in the back end, in real time, in the cloud.
Ah, I see.
Okay. And without getting into it now, but we're exploring, scripts that combine meshes into one big mesh, and then same thing further out in the distance, and how far we pull those levers to ensure that it's optimal.
Right.
And the same way with smart objects, okay, here's your beautiful finished created scene, but when it's half a mile down the road, we don't need to draw it in that level of detail. But it's not, because it's procedural, it's not actually a mesh. So therefore, we're having to recreate a lower version of that detail, but procedurally, as opposed to with meshes and stuff. So it gets really, really interesting and really complicated quickly.
Yeah.
But the point of what I'm trying to say there is all of that rolls back to the builder tool, which is, here's the thing you're building in the first place. It has to work in the outer world and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I've said it on podcasts before, but when you have a standalone single player game, you just download it and run it on your machine. As long as you've optimized for whatever machine's been running, it's relatively straightforward. But these days, most games are online.
Right.
So therefore, you now have internet connections to consider, and all of the traffic that you need to send back and forward to authoritative servers, whatever, which is typically multiplayer. My player is here, your player is there, my player's shot a gun, did it hit this player? So that's mostly netcode, which obviously we have that challenge, but we have in this project another challenge wrapped on top of all of that, which is 99% of all of the content is also in the cloud as well. And we also have a dependency on the internet connection for that. But it's a goal, and many projects solve this by basically going, we have 1,000 different worlds instead of one world. And actually, when you go into it, you just have this very siloed one-off experience, which is just that. And then you come out of it and you go back to a main menu or and so on. Whereas we're determined, we're absolute, because we're so passionate about the concept of neighborhoods and adjacency and proximity, that we really want everybody to feel like they are in a single world.
Right.
And I'm not on this podcast going to get into the netcode challenges of that, or maybe I'll touch upon it later, but there are some very nice little tricks we can do to make it feel like that. But essentially that's a big part of it as well. So all of these get wrapped up into, oh yeah, and when we build this in the builder tool, we need to consider that.
Wow.
So that's why it's a big piece of work.
Yeah, and that's crazy. That's something that you don't really realize. It's not just simple as let's make a builder that can build something as incredible as you can, because then it has, its limitations within Pavia, and it's no good if you can build something great and then not deploy it, is it? So
yeah. It's a bit like going to a painter and decorator and saying, how much to come and paint my upstairs, bedroom or something, and they go, oh, X, and then he turns up and then there's no house there. You told me there's only £200.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, yeah, but you haven't, there's no foundations. It's that really.
That's a quick job. Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, this has instantly got more complicated. So we're at that. We're having to deal with some of those foundational.
That makes sense.
Things, but that's what's super exciting about it.
That's super interesting.
Yeah.
So I think we can both agree that the builder tool is probably more complex than a lot of people think behind the scenes. Talk to me a little bit more about the outer world and all the procedural generation that goes on around it too.
Yeah. Okay. So we've been working loads on that as well. Certainly this year so far. So one thing that is relatively unique to, or maybe entirely unique to Pavia, is the outer world dynamically morphs in relation to what happens on the secondary markets. So
just explain that for us.
Okay, so what it means is there, to an extent, and when I'm talking, I'm not talking about excessive, but I'm talking about really roads and environments and stuff like that. So we really have always wanted to pursue, and we still are pursuing, the idea that if Ross owns a piece of land and I own a piece of land, we have a road between us or some kind of gap. If Ross purchases my piece of land, you now own it, those two plots will merge together and the road will disappear, and the road is effectively reclaimed and redrawn on the map.
Right.
It's that. But of course, that exchange of land happens outside of Pavia. It happens on, a marketplace, an NFT marketplace elsewhere. Yeah. So we have to query the chain, know that this change has happened, know that these pieces of land now exist in a single wallet, and the game will remorph itself. So that's what I mean by the map will always be moving and changing. And what it also means is when you the maths behind this is crazy, by the way, but when you reclaim the land, you end up with wider roads, smaller roads, and all that kind of stuff. So there is no, I have a 4 meter road around my house. It might be 4 meters, it might be 8 meters, it might be 16 meters, it might be 24 meters. You may end up with a bit of a public space there. And this changes all the time, which makes for a really, really interesting environment. Now then, while on the topic of environments, if you look at the map on the website, you will just see obviously a map divided into many, many small squares, plots of land. And you won't see any roads or anything like that. But the roads are there, and the gaps are there. And that is our opportunity to give this world a really beautiful feel, okay? And that is what we talk in themes. We talk in not defined districts necessarily, but different looks, different themes that happen in the areas between your plots to make this feel like the kind of metaverse that you want to spend some time in,
right?
Want to actually live in,
right?
Okay, and all of that is created procedurally. And what I mean by procedurally is you can't hand author this and define it explicitly for the reason that I just explained, which is actually the map will morph dynamically as land changes. So roads will get wider, they will get slimmer. Sometimes they will completely disappear. So how on earth do you deal with that? You deal with it with procedures, which means, okay, this area here has a certain theme about it. It has a certain road surface, certain paving, certain street lights, certain, architectural features. But the procedures have to go. But if this road disappears or gets wider or gets smaller, then I will literally redraw myself, and it will still look aesthetically beautiful. And that is effectively what we're working on right now. And man, I mean, we've got so much stuff that we would love to share, because it's cool as hell. So, let me just give you an example. We have one theme which has a really beautiful archway with some lovely pillars that will go across a road. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If that road doubles in size, we redraw a pillar, and the arch literally scales with it. If it shrinks down and down and down till the road becomes too narrow, and it's way too narrow a road to even warrant having this big fancy archway, no problem, it disappears.
Wow.
It gets replaced by a slimmer pillar, and if it's smaller again, it might be turn into a plant pot, and eventually maybe nothing. And this is all entirely geometrically drawn with procedures.
Which is crazy, because you look down at the map and you think it's just a normal grid, but really when you're walking through Pavia, from what you're telling me, no two roads are the same, really. You might be walking down a thin stretch of road between two plots, and then you're running around an estate, and it's just forever changing, right? So that's an incredibly difficult thing to have to try and, like you said, you can't draw it out. It has to be done on the fly, just like the
exactly.
morphing.
But it doesn't impact the buildable area of someone who owns land.
Right.
So if you own a single plot of land, you own a 16 by 16 meter plot of land, and that doesn't change.
Sure.
And unless we hit some major technical hurdle that I don't know about at this stage, but the intention is, and if you own two plots of land and you put them together, then that is now a 32 meter by 16 meter.
Right.
So ignore the roads, basically. Ignore them. That is our intention. We're still working on a lot of this stuff, but that's certainly the plan right now. The beauty of this, what it gives us, is the ability to be able to influence the environment in the sense that roads will have some elevation to them. They go up, so actually small retaining walls could start to appear.
Wow, okay.
So actually, and not radically, we're not talking about mountains here, but it just gives it that natural feel. Also, some roads have slight curvature to them. So actually, as you're not always looking down a grid, you're looking down a road, but you see it's got a slight bend to it. So you have to start to see the things that people have built, appear in your line of sight.
Yeah.
It just makes it feel more real and more immersive and things like that. So, and a lot of that prototyping we did ages ago.
Right.
But now what we're doing is we're really coming back to it and going, right, okay, let's really pressure test some of this stuff to see whether it's going to work in the way that we dreamed it would. And signs so far are very, very positive. And again, this opens up a whole world of possibilities in terms of making the environment variable, changeable, and potentially even manipulatable. Is that a word?
It is.
I just made it up. Changeable by the community even. Don't know. I mean, lots of things that we can potentially consider in the future to make it a more sort of community-driven project.
Last but not least, the third district is already being built, and it is soon to be finished. Can you tell us anything about it? Can you give us a little bit of a sneak peek or anything like that?
Well, for those that attended the live event, you'd have seen the Cyberpunk district, which was pretty finished and pretty polished. Obviously stating that there's interactivity and things like that to come in the future. But in terms of his aesthetics, it was there. Next to it, you'll see the what we call the Tokyo district. Needs a name really, but Tokyo Influence District. Which is there. We're going to come back and give that a little freshen up in places, but that's done. And then we're working on the third one right now. I am not going to tell you what it is. Suffice to say, I think the only hint is, I really love it. I love it. And it's the polar opposite of Cyberpunk.
Really?
Yeah. So I think that's probably
completely different.
If Cyberpunk is this, then this new district is this.
Sweet and sour. Okay, you heard it here first.
Exactly. So, but it's really nice. I mean, districts take a heck of a lot of time to build.
They do.
Enormous amount of effort goes into them, but we're going to get this third one done. Should be done by the end of Feb.
So next month, be on the lookout for tweets, announcements, anything like that. Something could come.
Yep.
Amazing. Brilliant. Paul Manuel, thank you for joining me today. Thank you to everyone for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content. We'll see you next time.